You're very welcome back, Nigeria. You're still watching the TVC Breakfast Show. We go straight into this, where the recently concluded Anambra State governorship election has continued to generate discussions about Nigeria's democratic process, voter participation, and the performance of the electoral umpire. Now, the Independent National Electoral Commission declared Charles Chukwuma Soludo of the All Progressives Grand Alliance the winner of the 2025 Anambra governorship election. Governor Soludo polled a whopping 422,664 votes to defeat the All Progressives Congress candidate Nicholas Ukachukwu, who scored 99,445 votes. According to INEC, 584,054 votes were valid out of the 595,298 total votes that were cast, with Soludo winning in all 21 local government areas of the state. Now, while the process was largely peaceful in many areas, reports of late arrival of materials, malfunctioning devices, and low voter turnout raised concerns about logistical preparedness. Joining us via Zoom right now for this conversation is the Head of Knowledge Management and Learning, Yaga Africa, Mrs. Safiya Bichi. You're very welcome, Ma. Good morning.
Good morning, and thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you for joining us here today. Now, I read about Yaga, and you are a non-profit organization that really focuses on promoting civic participation, human rights, and encouraging, democratic processes and the concept of democracy in Nigeria. It's wonderful work that you're doing. Now, from Yaga's data insights and your observation of this past Anambra elections, where do you think we are at democratically? What can this tell us, this concluded election, about the evolving democratic processes or electoral processes right now in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you so much for inviting me. I'll first start by saying that in terms of our electoral process, there's a significant improvement in one of the weakest links, which is logistics management. We've seen how in the past elections, we've moved with about 20% more. In last election, we had polls opening by 7:30, which is the designated time as stated in INEC guideline, which is 7:30. And we've seen people, only 17% of polling units opening in the last election. In the election before that, we're seeing just 28%. But as at Saturday, last election, we saw that polls, 49% of polls were opened by 7:30. Is that where we want to be? No, but but we cannot ignore the significant improvement in that, and also in the general processes. Beavers were deployed, rightly deployed to all the polling units. In 90% of polling units, beavers worked perfectly well throughout the elections, and in about 5 or 6% of polling units, we saw that the beavers malfunctioned, but were either fixed or replaced. Well, in just about 2 or 3%, there was no replacement or malfunctioning. This shows that in terms of the electoral process, there's significant improvement from what we have, and INEC to an extent is mastering how to deploy some of this technology. We had a good outing also in terms of deployment of some of these materials in the last elections, in the recent past elections. But the biggest threat has been, and the biggest threat we're experiencing now to our democratic system is this pandemic, or let me describe it, a virus of vote buying. This also stared its head in this last election, in the Saturday 8th election. We saw that in the Edo 2024 elections. We saw that in Ondo 2024 elections, and we saw it on Saturday. And we know that this is not just a threat to our elections. It undermines the principle of elections. It's not just a threat to our democracy, but it undermines the principle of elections. And these are some of the issues we think that is right. It's high time we tackle it because it's becoming a pandemic in our electoral election process, in our electoral process generally. So this is time for us to call on all the stakeholders, and this is the time for us to revisit some of the proposals we've had in the past, especially on Electoral Offense Commission. People need to be called to book so that they can serve as deterrence to this virus that is spreading very fast.
Okay. The election was described by a whole lot of Nigerians as free and fair. But how free and fair is the free and fair of that election? That is one of the questions I want to ask you. The second one is that the gains that were recorded in this election, don't you think it's because it's only one state? Are we looking at a situation where we'll have the same level of success at the general election?
Okay, thank you so much. Perhaps what occasioned this statement or the conclusion that the election was free and fair is because the vote cast, the total vote announced by INEC is a reflection of the votes cast at the polling unit. But we know that in terms of assessing the credibility of elections, there are lots of indicators that need to be considered. And that's why in my initial statement, I mentioned that vote buying itself undermines the principle of elections. And if you consider that within the context of this election, you understand that there are some credibility issues when it comes to vis-a-vis that. And the most interesting thing is that this vote buying did not happen. It was not just done by one political party to say that, oh, the party bought all the votes. A lot of parties, most of the parties that had the majority votes were involved in this vote buying. So this is on one side. On the other side is on the aspect of probably because Anambra is known for logistical issues when it comes to elections. This is the first time in the last 3 years we're seeing that polls were opening early. Almost 50% of polls were opened by 7:30, which is a total departure from what we've had. Then the thought is the fact that the security environment in the state was not heated as compared to what we've had in the last election and even the election before last. But more specifically is the last election. Some people describe the last election as war. We've seen that even election day officials and some electoral officers refused to deploy that's ad hoc officers refused to deploy in the last election because the security environment was not safe. And perhaps it's time to commend the security agents. And you also know that in terms of conduct of security agents, there's a significant improvement in the professionalism of security agents in this election as compared to our past experiences, specifically the Ekiti 2018 elections, where we've heard of election no be war and a lot of security agents acting unprofessionally. But in recent times, and even in the Saturday 8th elections, we've seen some level of professionalism. But again, there's still a gap there. One of the gaps we've noticed is the fact that there was a disproportional distribution of security agents. I'm not saying that it must be equal across polling unit, because based on intelligence, there could be some intentional deployment. But what we've seen shows that that's not the case. So, for instance, in some polling units, you see that you see that the polling unit has one security agent, in some 2, some 7, some 10, and you'll be wondering what's the reason behind this kind of variation. And the second part is that we've seen security van moving from polling unit to polling unit and checking if there's a security agent in the polling unit. If there is, they might probably drop one. If there's none, they will drop the number of security agents they fell. So it shows that there was no intentional deployment of security agents across the polling unit, because day before elections, security agents should have had the list of polling units in the state and should have also planned and know where you're deploying, not just moving random as if you're working you're moving on a taxi or on a train to drop citizens, to stop by every bus stop. That was the kind of scenario that happened. But in terms of professionalism and attitude towards citizens, I think the security agents have done considerably well, but they can do better. They can also do better. The next I'm going to talk about is in terms of engagement and conduct of security agents is in handling the issue of vote buying. I know that INEC is the lead agency in terms of electoral offenses, but again, they work closely with security agents. Some of these vote buying are happening right before the security agents, and nothing has been done. We've also got reports of people canvassing for votes in the polling units. This is also a violation of the electoral law and the electoral act and the INEC electoral guidelines. So these are some of the issues I think they should consider. We've also seen on the news that about only 2 or 3 persons were arrested by EFCC on the account of vote buying. We're expecting to see more than that, and this is the time that security agencies needs to stand up to the occasion to address this menace that is killing our electoral system.
Yeah.
We should see more people being arrested. We should even see high-profile people, that is the funders of this vote buying, being arrested. This will probably be by this. I believe that this issue will be tackled. It will serve as a deterrent for people that are looking at this as a practice. It has become a practice now for people, and it has become, in fact, it's becoming more structural than we think than it used to be, and this also must be settled. If not, it will continue to undermine the credibility of the elections and the vote or the will of the citizens.